No compass, no charts, no clue where you're going, and plenty of ways to die. Welcome to life as a Viking navigator in the North Atlantic, where your job description basically reads, find land before everyone starves, freezes, or murders you for getting lost. Again, picture this. It's the year 975. You're Wulfric Nordenson, sailing master aboard the longship Serpent. You've been chosen for this prestigious position because you once correctly guessed which direction Norway was while completely drunk at a funeral feast. Congratulations on your promotion. The first thing you need to understand about Viking navigation is that it operated on what modern scientists call the "oh gods, I hope this works" principle. While Mediterranean sailors had been using the North Star and rudimentary charts for centuries, Vikings sailing the North Atlantic had to develop their own methods. Sure, the North Star was reliable enough when you could see it. But here's the punchline. In the North Atlantic, clear night skies were about as common as a peaceful monastery visit from your crew. Wulfric, where are we? Shouts Jarl Thorbjorn, your expedition leader, as fog blankets the ship for the fourth consecutive day. West, you declare confidently, having absolutely no idea if that's true. You've been using a sunstone, a crystal of Iceland spar that supposedly reveals the sun's position through polarization of light. Supposedly. You're pretty sure you're just holding a pretty rock and pretending it gives you magical directional powers. The reality is that Viking navigation relied on observation of natural phenomena that were, at best, inconsistent. Birds, whales, cloud formations, floating vegetation, and subtle changes in ocean swells all served as directional clues. Imagine trying to find Greenland because a certain type of bird started following the ship, or the water looks a bit greener than yesterday. That's not navigation. That's desperate guesswork with a beard. Men, I have excellent news. You announced to the crew one morning. I've spotted a whale swimming northward, which means land is that way. How do you know the whale isn't lost too? Mutters Halfdan the suspicious. He has a point. The lack of instrumentation wasn't your only problem. The Viking calendar divided the year into sailing season and certain death season. The latter, comprising roughly 6 months of winter, brought storms that could appear from nowhere, transforming a placid sea into a ship-swallowing nightmare within hours. During one particularly violent storm, as the sea serpent rides waves taller than the mast, Jarl Thorbjorn crawls to your position at the steering oar. Is this normal? He shouts over the howling wind. Absolutely, you lie, while mentally composing your death poem. The sea goddess Ran is just testing us. In reality, North Atlantic storms were so ferocious that the Vikings developed a rich mythology to explain them, attributing the chaos to gods and giants battling above the clouds. This was more comforting than acknowledging the truth. You were in a wooden boat in the world's most dangerous waters with no way to predict weather patterns. Speaking of weather, let's discuss temperature. Vikings sailed in waters so cold that falling overboard meant death within minutes. Not from drowning, mind you, but from hypothermia. The crew knew this, which is why they watched you, the navigator, with special intensity. Make a navigational error that extends the journey, and those extra days at sea might exhaust the food stores or fresh water. We should have reached Greenland 3 days ago, grumbles Thorbjorn as the men gnaw on hardtack so stale it could be used as a weapon. Greenland is shy, you respond, desperately scanning the horizon. She reveals herself only to the patient. Patience won't fill our water barrels, Thorbjorn replies ominously. The historical record shows that Viking navigators developed impressive techniques for dead reckoning, estimating position based on time, speed, and direction. They measured days using day marks, dividing daylight hours into 8 periods. But here's the hilarious part. In the far northern summers, the sun barely sets, throwing off your entire timekeeping system. In winter, you barely see it at all. Imagine trying to use a sundial in a place where shadows either don't move for hours or don't exist at all. What time is it, Wulfric? Asks a crewman. You squint at the sky where the sun has been hovering near the horizon for what feels like days. It's either mid-afternoon or early morning, possibly yesterday. Another delightful aspect of your job. Even if you manage to reach your destination, You had to memorize every landmark, current pattern, and navigational reference for the return journey. Viking navigators didn't have the luxury of maps as we understand them. They relied on oral sailing directions called hafilla, passed down through generations. These included colorful descriptions like, sail toward the sunset until you see black birds, then turn north when the water smells of fish. One morning, after weeks at sea, a crewman spots land on the horizon. The men cheer wildly. Wulfric has delivered us to Greenland, Thorbjorn announces. You peer at the approaching coastline with growing dread. The topography doesn't match the descriptions you've memorized. This isn't Greenland. It's somewhere else entirely. Actually, you say carefully, I believe we've discovered a new land. A new land? You mean we're lost? Thorbjorn says flatly. Not lost, you correct him. Explorers can't be lost. We're just somewhere unexpected. What you've actually done is accidentally discover North America 500 years before Columbus. A navigational error so profound it will eventually be celebrated as a triumph of exploration. But right now, your crew is considering whether you'd be more useful as a navigator or as emergency rations. Historical records tell us that Viking navigators sometimes carried ravens aboard their ships, releasing them when they suspected land was near. If the bird flew toward the horizon and didn't return, it had likely found land in that direction. If it returned to the ship, no such luck. Release the raven, you command dramatically. The bird is released, circles the ship twice, then settles back on the mast, looking at you with contempt. The raven has spoken, you announce. We shall continue westward. The raven just told us there's no land that way, points out the resident skeptic. Ah, but perhaps he's a contrarian raven, you suggest. The crew exchanges glances, silently calculating how many days of food remain. The ultimate irony of being a Viking navigator is that success meant your methods were attributed to the gods' favor, while failure was entirely your fault. Archaeological evidence shows that successful voyages between Scandinavia, Iceland, Greenland, and even North America were routine for centuries, indicating that Viking navigational techniques, despite their limitations, were remarkably effective. Yet individual navigators received little credit, unless something went wrong. After weeks of sailing along an unfamiliar coastline, you finally recognize landmarks described in the hafilla. You've reached a Viking settlement in Greenland, and the crew's murderous glares have transformed into reluctant respect. You've done it, Wulfric. Thorbjorn claps you on the shoulder. Though I admit, I had my doubts when we reached that other land first. All part of my navigation strategy. You lie smoothly. I always find new lands before finding our destination. Keeps the journey interesting. As you help secure the ship in the settlement's harbor, a young man approaches you eagerly. You're a sailing master? I've been studying the stars and birds, hoping to become a navigator myself someday. You look at his hopeful face and consider telling him the truth, that the job involves constant terror, the persistent threat of starvation, regular accusations of incompetence, and the special knowledge that at any moment, a mistake could doom dozens of men to a cold, wet grave. Instead, you say, it's a noble profession, boy, the greatest adventure a man could ask for. After all, someone needs to get hopelessly lost and accidentally discover America again in a few years. The final irony? After centuries of Vikings successfully navigating the North Atlantic using methods that modern scientists still don't fully understand, the Little Ice Age arrived, making those sea routes impassable and causing the abandonment of many settlements. All those navigational secrets, passed down through generations of sailors, became useless, proving that in the grand cosmic joke that was being a Viking navigator, even when you mastered the impossible art of finding your way across a trackless ocean, nature still had the last laugh. So the next time you complain about your GPS recalculating, spare a thought for Wulfric the Navigator, finding new continents by mistake and pretending it was the plan all along, one terrified raven at a time.